Welcome to East Coast Bias. I'm your co-host Christian, along with my fellow co-hosts Jack and Dan. Three guys who love a bunch of different East Coast sports teams that we cover in depth on this show. Today we'll talk baseball trade deadline, potential new Mets owner. We'll tell you about one prospect you need to know if you're a fan of the Nats, Mets, or Yankees. And then we'll talk football, and we'll cover some under-the-radar players for the Jets and Giants that we think will have bigger than expected impacts this season. Let's get right into it, boys. Quite a busy trade deadline, actually. It's now past a number of trades across the league, but pretty quiet for the Nats, Mets, and Yankees. Jack, rough week for the Nats on the field, and they didn't do anything off the field to improve the team. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I could talk about this forever, but it's been a rough week for the Nats. They're 11-21. They're down to the Phillies right now. The only worst team in the NL right now is the Pittsburgh Pirates. So I think the decision maybe not to buy at the deadline proved correct. I don't even think that the kind of purchases that the Lerners would have allowed Mike Rizzo to make in the middle of a 60-game season would have made much of a difference. So I guess I'm glad they didn't send out any prospects or young players. I will say, though, it feels like they've kind of punted on this whole season at this point. And this is not exactly how I envisioned the post-World Series season to go. So I'm a little disappointed in that. But I guess in this case, standing pat was right because I don't know what they could have done to turn around the situation they're in now. So.
And what if I would have told you before the season started that on September 1st, the Nats would have probably the two best hitters in the league at the moment, and Juan Soto and Trey Turner? I mean, we'd say they're running away with the division. I mean, what's going? Is it just all the pitching, the injuries? I mean, are you worried about Scherzer? I've been thinking for years. I mean, so many innings, the playoffs, the World Series last year.
It hasn't happened. He hasn't happened. He hasn't fallen off yet. Still hasn't happened.
Well, he's fallen off a little bit this year.
Just like okay.
His last start was vintage Scherzer.
Yes. Is he going to win? Is he going to win another Cy Young this year? No, absolutely not. Austin Voth and Eric Fetty are just not major league starters, and if you're going to put them out there, yes, if you're going to put them out there every 5 days, with the way the Nats offense is going, those are games we just can't win. So right away, you think 40%, we're losers. I don't think it's Scherzer's problem. Obviously, they're missing Strasburg. Corbin pitched pretty well today. The bullpen hasn't been the problem, but they're just not scoring runs. Stats says that every time Soto's not knocking anybody in because nobody's on base. The only person who ever knocks in is Trey Turner. And every time Trey Turner gets a hit, no one else is on base ahead of him. So as hot as those two have been, and Turner has really turned into a superstar, the offense just, they're missing at least one bat, maybe two at this point. They got old real quick. There's not a lot of offense in the system, so I don't know where they're headed after this. And then Mike Rizzo, I wonder where that Lerner-Rizzo relationship is right now.
If you're wondering, or if you're going to pinpoint it on the offense to say one guy who really is not doing what he needs to do, are you going to say Robles is the guy who's not producing? Because he's the top of the lineup guy you want, right?
Right. So Robles is probably, yes, Robles is the guy they thought that was going to make the jump this year, right? He was going to go from serviceable hitter, wonderful outfielder who can bat eighth to, the guy who replaces Adam Eaton in the two spot, some power, some speed, and there's no better center fielder in the league than he is. But it just hasn't happened for him. That combined with the absolutely horrific decision to just hand Carter Kaboom a job. That's twice he's come up over 60 games. He's hitting less than 200 on his major league career with an OPS under 600. They got nothing out of him. So they're playing Kendrick, Cabrera. Josh Harrison is getting time now. The team got real old real fast, and they're just not hitting.
Where are you on Robles? Are we just spoiled by what we've seen from Soto and Turner coming up young, making the immediate impact? I mean, is this normal? What we should expect from a guy that young coming to the majors? He's got to learn how to hit major league pitching. Or are you starting to think, he's one of these prospects that was maybe oversold a little bit?
I don't know if he's oversold a little bit. I think people got it in their head, though, that the Nats just know how to develop guys. And when the rest of the league says, hey, this guy's a 5-star, he ends up being a 5-star. And I think everyone believed in Robles. He's not a terrible hitter. He's not Vlad Guerrero-like in his pitch selection, but he just doesn't know which ones to swing at and which ones not to swing at is probably his biggest problem. He still strikes out too much. He's hitting less than 230. He's got power. He's got speed, but I worry he is closer to Michael A. Taylor's career than Juan Soto's. He's such a good center fielder, though. I mean, he is – if you were ever going to find a spot on a team for a guy who can't hit, it'd be Robles playing center fielder for you. But he's really hurt. And 2 years ago, I thought he was going to be Ricky Henderson, and obviously I don't think that's going to happen.
And we can't move on from the Nats without talking about Strasburg. What are your thoughts on Strasburg these days? So 32, they got him, I believe, 7 more years until age 39 season. Another injury. Was it a choice between him and Rendon? Did you view it that way?
The scuttlebutt in DC says it was, that the Lerners just weren't going to pay for both. And they thought pitching was more important than offense. I wonder how much Rendon wanted to come back. I don't know why, but if he really wanted to be in that, he could have just said, hey, offer me X. But, he never made any sort of counteroffer that said, hey, here's my number. If you hit it, I'll stay. It never got that far. He's crushing it with the Angels. I don't know why he'd rather be in Anaheim than in Washington, but
he's a Texas,
he's a Texas guy. I understand.
Whatever we call Texas, whatever Southwest, whatever Texas is, he's a Southwest, West Coast guy. So
I think they call people from Texas Texans, if I remember that correctly.
No app description really fits Texas.
And maybe he's just not cut out for the East Coast. It's not for everybody.
It is not the boiler, the pressure that is Washington D.C. baseball. You never know.
He got one whiff of some of that winter, and he said, "I'll take off for that other coast."
So the New York Daily News homepage today had a headline that just said, "Pete Alonso mess gets worse." What's going on in Queens, guys?
It seems odd for the press to pin this on Pete, who has really struggled to follow up his year, and now it's kind of affecting his defense. He came into this year, proclaiming that he was going to win a Gold Glove. He was on this mission to improve his defense, but now his offensive funk has just completely warped his whole game. And with the shortened season, I just don't think it's something he's going to come out of this year. He's just going to have to, I think, devote himself a little bit more to his work, go into the next season, and try to change things there, because it just doesn't seem to be working for him this year.
Yeah, and
but it's not his fault.
It's hot take city to make any kind of judgment. Again, look at guys around the league. Bellinger struggling. You can point to a number of other stars around the league. Right? If this were a regular season, we're in May. Right now. Right. So and nobody would be freaking out. So I think, it's. The guy set the record for rookie home runs. It's just ridiculous to go off 30 games of the following season and freaking out. But that is New York, and that's the East Coast pressure cooker.
He's a guy who's very big on social media, tries to make himself, the front and center leader of the team. So I understand why they would choose to make him a target, but he is far, far from the biggest problem that the Mets have had this year. Really unfair for them to go after him like that.
And it's official. Uncle Stevie's coming to town.
Yeah, big news. I was gonna say, Dan, there's nothing you can be upset about with the New York Mets right now. You got your man. You've been on it for months. Uncle Stevie, by all accounts, this time in the next couple weeks, will be the owner of the New York Mets, and you will have not only the richest owner in baseball, I believe the second richest owner of any sports team, behind Steve Ballmer of the Clippers, one of the founders of Microsoft. So how does that feel? You will have the second richest owner in all of sports.
Well, let me correct you on one thing. There is always a reason to be upset as a Mets fan, and that will be in existence until the end of time. I'm convinced at this point. But Uncle Stevie does offer a small glimmer of hope. Very rich man. You got to hope that he's going to devote not just to the players on the field, because the Mets have had decent salaries collectively for their entire team, even through these rough Wilpon years. It's got to go into making this organization coherent. This organization from top to bottom just lacks coherency, a philosophy, some togetherness. It's all Jeff Wilpon's fault. Any Met fan would agree with that.
Jeff Wilpon, if you'd like to come on the show.
Yeah.
As a guest. There's the invitation for you, buddy.
Shout out. I think we call him Cousin Jeff.
Yes.
Yes.
No, stepbrother Jeff living out in the treehouse in the backyard. But it was great news. Probably the only good news us Met fans have had in the last week, maybe even two. Somehow the Mets are still on the fringes of the playoff race here. I guess that's probably due to the shortened season, and it seems like everybody makes the playoffs this year. So it's not completely unfair to write this season off. But I think just by playing enough to get Uncle Stevie back in the business, back in the fold, let's hope it doesn't get screwed up. Really big, huge score, big coup for Met fans. So I'm very excited.
So Uncle Stevie comes on the show next week, and he says, Dan, what's the first thing I need to do? What are you telling him?
I'm going to tell him that we need to put some money into scouting in the minor leagues and in player development. The Mets have certainly not lacked for homegrown stars recently, but they really don't produce enough of them. And it seems like they're having way too many of these guys who come up hyped and flame out and just do not work whatsoever. And definitely invest in pitching.
Well, I thought you'd say fire Brody Van Wagenen after Manfred Gate this week.
And there's no way any rational person, which I presume that Steve Cohen is based on his bottom line, would want to keep that guy as the general manager in the New York Mets. I think even he is a fan, so it's not like he doesn't know what's going on in New York. Just for the Edwin Diaz, Robinson Cano disaster piece alone, I think that there's plenty of merits or demerits to warrant the first order of business being firing Brody Van Wagenen.
Jack, what's the outside view as an NL East fan on this? Typically as a Nats fan, you can count on a dysfunctional Mets organization to give you a better chance in the NL East. Are you worried?
No. I feel like dysfunction wins out over ownership 9 times out of 10.
Doesn't dysfunction come from the ownership, though?
That can also happen. Stevie Cohen, I have a feeling, is going to throw a lot of money at getting the Mets real good in 2022. The first time he can actually go out and probably spend an off season and get free agents. But, I hate to say it, with the Mets' long history with big buys, free agency, Bobby Bonilla day passed once again this year. Let's see if he knows how to pick players before I get too worried about it. I just don't think the Mets are that well-run an organization. There are others I'm not worried about the Mets so much. It's the Atlanta Braves, I think, that are the team that are set up to be, great for the next 5 to 8 years. They'll be the Nats of 2012 to 2020. I do want to give some props to the Mets, though, for doing possibly the most East Coast biased thing they possibly could and trading for Toms River, New Jersey, and Rutgers legend Todd Frazier at the trade deadline. It's like they knew we launched a podcast just so we could talk about Todd Frazier coming home, the Godfather.
Todd Frazier, a great guy, a Rutgers guy, a Jersey guy through and through. One of the most confusing, confounding moves I could have thought of. Just blocking space potentially for somebody younger who should be getting playing time. But the Mets are addicted to these clubhouse presence guys who are real rah-rah. And Todd Frazier certainly is that. So I guess that's why he's back.
And Todd Frazier and Adam Eaton are probably apparently do not like each other.
No,
that's after Eaton got traded out from the White Sox. They've had words several times.
Omar Vizquel is on the Todd father side, so I'm with anything Omar Vizquel says is good with me.
Okay,
so I'm with Todd on that one.
I'll agree with that. What Omar says goes.
Let's say in New York, Yanks didn't make any moves either, and I was disappointed. But Cashman is just he's adopted this philosophy of he just will not trade prospects at the deadline, which I can't disagree with. You guys know I love Cashman, and I think in this year, there's just the playoffs are just so much riskier with this you got to go through a 3-game series and then a 5-game series. Even if you have the Dodgers, by far the best team in baseball, it's just such a crapshoot. I can't really be too upset with it. I'm glad they didn't trade Clint Frazier. I'm getting more and more, in love with this kid every week. Just made a diving catch before we signed on here. So, it is what it is. I think they're just hoping to get some of these injured guys back. Yeah, it seems like Judge is, who knows if we'll see Judge again anytime this season. Stanton, I heard Cashman on the radio today say they're still a week away from even knowing when Stanton will be back. So we might not see either of them. But with the way Tampa's playing, they're not catching Tampa to win the division. So, I'm fine with just rolling the dice, see who comes back, who can get healthy for the playoffs, and, come back next year stronger.
One thing about Cash is he's so masterful at maintaining the Yankees 40-man roster and knowing when guys are potentially going to come aboard. He's going to have to drop guys off the 40-man roster. He's really very masterful at knowing the organization in that respect. And he seems to make deals based on that strength, which is something that I'm going to stray a little bit off the East Coast, but that's something the San Diego Padres kind of masterfully did this year in acquiring all that talent. They were going to face a similar roster crunch as Cashman kind of deals from and use that to their advantage to bring in a lot of big league pieces. So it may have been just that there wasn't that same crunch and he didn't feel that same urgency to clear some space in the minor leagues for the Yankees.
And sticking on the Yankees team, shout out to my boy Derek Jeter. I love that they went out and got Marte. I don't think it's going to make any difference, but such a terrible organization for so many years. The few fans they've had, they put them through hell. I think a lot of people saw that and said, huh? But kudos to them for, they're in the race. They're in second place, which is a playoff spot this year, guaranteed. Kudos to them for going out, saying to their guys, you guys are playing well, doing, exceeding expectations. We're going to go out and get you some help. So way to go, Derek. I'm a big fan of that move. And it's funny how baseball works. I'm bummed about the trade deadline, but I don't even care because we brought up this kid, Deivi Garcia, to make his major league debut on Sunday against the Mets. And man, 5'9", about 160 pounds, probably neither of those are true, but he pitched a gem. Dan, I don't know if you got to see any of that game. This kid has the most unbelievable curveball I've seen from a Yankees pitcher in some time. So I'm really jazzed on that. And let's stick with the futures theme. This is a segment we like to call Guys You Need to Know. We're going to go around the horn and tell you about one prospect for the Nats, Mets, and Yankees that we're really excited about for the future. Dan, let's kick it off with the Mets. Who should we know?
Well, the Mets are kind of like the opposite of the Yankees of Brian Cashman in many respects, but in their complete inability to manage the 40-man roster. So it's tough to kind of look around and see a guy who I think needs to have an immediate impact. That's really what the Mets need, is somebody who's going to come up and have an immediate impact. They got a guy right now that I think can have an immediate impact, and I'm wondering why he doesn't get an opportunity. Pitcher by the name of Franklin Kilome. Fangraphs has him in the top 10 Mets prospects, towards the bottom. Mets need starting pitching help in the worst way right now. I think he's a guy who can come in. He's got control problems, but has really good stuff. Big guy, about 6'6", wide base, throws hard. It has some control problems, as many young pitchers do, but can really strike them out. Good ground ball tendencies in his minor league numbers. I think Franklin Kilome is a pitcher to watch who could maybe have a ceiling as a mid-rotation starter for the Mets, which for the Mets, aside from Jacob deGrom, would definitely be something they need.
So he's a starter. He's not a flamethrower destined for the bullpen.
I would be remiss if I didn't read some scouting concerns about his potential to be in the bullpen, but it has all to do with his control problems. If he can remedy those control problems, I think he's got the big frame, the body to be a workhorse starter. And I think that's where his future lies, and they definitely need it.
There's a lot of value in that. I mean, we've seen, if you look at the good teams the past decade, they stockpile these flame-throwing arms that, if they don't work out for the rotation, which 95% of them don't, you move them to the pen and they become a huge asset that help you win games, or you flip them, for at the trade deadline some year, and you can bring back some real prospects, because everybody needs bullpen help every year. So where does the Mets system sit? Have you seen any rankings on that lately? Are they top half or bottom half?
I would say they're probably firmly in the middle.
Yeah.
They do have some talent, but it's few and far between. I think the biggest problem is that Van Wagenen has really raided the cupboard, so to speak, emptied out the top levels of the Mets farm system, specifically with starting pitching. And you see that pinch right now, which is why the Mets have to unfortunately start guys like this scrap heap Ariel Jurado, who came in and tonight is getting bombed the heck out of Camden Yards.
And let's keep the streak going of Jared Kelenic mentions. It's hard to rate a system when your number one prospect is currently playing in another system for the Seattle Mariners.
It would be one thing if that was a deal that brought the Mets something that they could really hold on to and be proud of. Cano is sort of the contract being as bad as it is, hasn't performed too terribly. But Edwin Diaz is more than enough to make Met fans just view that one horribly, wondering what could have been with Kelenic when we got to watch Diaz giving up bombs almost every day.
And while we're on prospects, I should mention I was flipping around the MLB package before we signed on here, and I came across the Pirates game, and Key Brian Hayes, who is their first or second prospect, depending on what list you read, makes his major league debut tonight. Fits this podcast well because he is the son of Charlie Hayes, an unbelievable third base prospect. Who can forget my man Charlie Hayes? He gave me one of the greatest moments of my life, a 96 World Series, making the catch in foul territory, jumping up and down. And they actually had Charlie on the broadcast for his first at bat, kind of doing the play-by-play with the announcers. So that was a really cool moment to watch.
That's the first World Series of your life, right? For the Yankees?
Yeah, they had one World Series of my life. So a moment I'll never forget. I remember exactly where I was sitting. So congrats to the Hayes family on that big moment tonight. Jack?
Yep.
That's hard to ding their system. I know they're ranked towards the bottom, but
they are.
When you bring up guys like Juan Soto, Trey Turner, and Victor Robles, you're going to take a hit.
Nats have
who should we know?
Nats have a long history of developing their own prospects, going back as far as Ian Desmond. Then it was Strasburg. Then it was Harper. Then it was Rendon. Then it was Turner. Then it was Soto. Then it was Robles. These guys have all worked out. But along the way, we have made a couple trades, particularly the one for Adam Eaton, where we gave up Lucas Giolito, who threw a no-hitter last weekend. So the farm system is really.
Who was the second guy in that trade? Steve Stone. I was watching the White Sox game the night. Stone was raving about him.
Dane Dunning. Dane Dunning made his major league debut as a starter the night after, I believe he threw that Giolito threw no hitter.
Okay, yeah. So I forgot his name, but Stone was saying he's better than Giolito.
Oh, really? Because then there's Ronaldo Lopez too. We gave up 3 power 99-mile-per-hour throwers, one of which who was a superstar, for a 5'9", 172-pound outfielder. But we won the World Series.
That's a trade though that 20 years from now people will kill it. But Eaton helped you win a World Series.
You won a World Series. I can't.
You can't say anything.
I'm just saying that Nats have a long history of doing this. But here's the thing now with their farm system: the 2 top guys, Carter Kaboom, just got sent down. Luis Garcia, now the everyday second baseman, got off to a really hot start. And then Major League Pitching quickly figured out where his holes are. That happens to a lot of guys when they first come up. So he's gotten a little cooler from there. That leaves the guy to keep an eye on as 6'8", 250-pound right-hand starter Jackson Rutledge. Kid out of San Jacinto Community College. He was our first pick in 2018, 17th overall. Big-time right-handed power pitcher. I think everyone notices that the Washington Nationals, they love right-handed, big guy, big size power pitchers, especially collegiate pitchers. We don't go for a lot of high school guys. This guy's right up that alley. He throws 99. They're setting him up to be a starter someday. Hopefully he slots in at some point, as Scherzer ages and that contract ends. But if he could get good quickly and they can slot him in as a 4th starter as soon as next year behind the 3 guys they got ahead of him, he can be successful throwing 99 in that spot. So Rutledge is the guy I'm keeping my eye on. There's another guy, Mason Denneberg, who was the first-round pick in 2017, gotten off to a really, really bad start in the minors. And usually when a pitcher in the first round gets off to a horrific start right off the bat, very rarely do I feel like they recover and become a big-time starter in the majors. So Rutledge is my guy. After that, there's not a lot of depth. There's one other guy who's the middle infielder, but the Nats middle infield is probably set for the next 10 years, especially with Trey Turner slowly turning into a superstar. So Rutledge is my guy, and you can't argue with a name like Jackson. And speaking of children of families, if you want to feel old, the Marlins made another move at the deadline this year. Not only did they get Marte, but they traded for Jeff Conine's son.
Oh,
So,
Mr. Marlin.
Legacy in the Marlins.
Legacy.
Mr. Marlin Jr. I believe the Marlins fired Jeff Conine.
Yeah, they did fire. You don't fire Jeff Conine. I think Derek Jeter after taking over.
He did. He fired Mr. Marlin. So maybe this is the olive branch.
He fired Andre Conine. He fired Andre Dawson and Jeff Conine on the same day. Come on, man. What's going on there?
Hey, you gotta cut costs wherever you can realize them.
The Hawk was getting paid. The Hawk was getting paid too much.
I don't think either of them had much to stand on in terms of their resumes of baseball operations, whatever they did.
Right.
But hey, Jeter's a winner. So
yes. And let me just say, can the Marlins go back to their original uniforms? These uniforms they've had
the F and the
I don't even remember what their original uniforms look like at this point.
The F with the Marlin around it, the teal and black, and they're beautiful.
I gotta disagree. I actually love their new.
You like these?
Yeah, it's Miami.
These are better than the ones before that, but I don't love the ones they have now.
They are fully embracing Miami.
I get
monoculture.
But teal was Miami's color in 1993. I love those things. Go back to them.
I'm with you,
Christian.
Teal
hat, the full teal hat with the black afro.
That was so bland for Miami. You cannot have a bland uniform if you play in Miami.
You got to spice it up. You know I love that Cuban culture, so I love it.
Absolutely.
All right, fair.
Yeah, so let's close it out. Yankees. So a couple guys to choose from. They got a pretty good system these days, but my guy is affectionately known as the Martian. This is Jason Dominguez. So they signed Jason last year as a 16-year-old out of the Dominican Republic. I think pretty widely seen as the most heralded recruit or prospect out of the Dominican Republic, possibly of all time. He's a switch hitter, 5'10", a little under 200 pounds, but apparently does everything. He's a 60, and if you know the traditional scouting scale, 60 in every category. He's a catcher, a shortstop, and a center fielder. He's going to be a center fielder in the majors. The Yankees signed him for $5.1 million, biggest bonus ever given to someone out of the Dominican Republic. They spent every dollar they had. Normally teams will go out and sign 20, 30, 40 kids. They spent all $5 million on Jason Dominguez. And actually they lucked out because his name is Jason, spelled with two S's, because his father was a diehard Yankees fan, and he's actually named after Jason Giambi, if you can believe it.
Get the F out of here.
So every team wanted him, of course, but his father was pretty adamant that if the Yankees were interested, he was going to sign with the Yankees. And
I'm sure that $5.1 million didn't hurt either.
Yeah, well, I think those things are capped, so I think other teams could offer the same amount of money, depending on what they had available. But I think he was destined to be Yankees. He's being called the next Mickey Mantle. He's because he's a switch hitter. So we as Yankees fans are just so pumped for this kid. Obviously, he's a couple years away, but this kid is one of those prospects where if he's not in the majors by 20, I mean, you're going to start thinking he's a bust because, he's just that hyped up, and we're real excited about him. So watch out for the Martian in the next coming years coming to New York.
The Mets
number one prospect.
The Mets hope to sign his fat, lazy brother, Jeremy Dominguez, if he's available.
And, it's interesting in reading about him.
Stevie, not Uncle Stevie.
About him. But prepping for the show today, I was reading a little bit more about him. And I've always wondered why the Dominican Republic has such a stranglehold on producing great major leaguers. And, if you get into one of these academies, which he joined when he was 13, they only go to school on Saturdays.
Yep.
Monday through Friday is baseball in the morning, baseball in the afternoon, baseball at night, and they do school one day a week on Saturdays. trying to prepare for Major League Baseball. So
there's a reason they get signed at 15 and 14. It's because they're just bred for baseball at that point.
Right.
Yep. Stay in school unless you can hit the ball 450 feet. All right, boys, let's move over to the NFL. A couple interesting items this week, Dan. Giants signing Logan Ryan, which we're real excited about.
Thank God.
But rather than
Rutgers, baby.
Yeah, another great
hometown guy.
Player, part of that Rutgers to New England Belichick pipeline. So rather than focus, we covered off the season preview, hit all the big stars last week. This week we want to focus on some under-the-radar guys who the average fan may not be focusing on, but who we expect for our teams to make big impacts this year. Jack, let's start with a Jets offensive player who we as non-Jets fans may not be focusing on. Who's going to come out of nowhere this year to make a big impact?
You tell me if this is nowhere enough or not, but a guy by the name of Chris Herndon is about to become a top 10 NFL tight end. Kid taken in the third round out of Miami 3 years ago. It was rookie year. He caught almost 40 balls, became a favorite of Sam Darnold, real fast, real big, got hurt last year, and then was suspended for taking a DUI, which you can't do that stuff, especially when you're going into your second year. That's when you're supposed to make the leap. Everyone's been raving about him in training camp. He and Darnold have hooked up. The one position on the Jets where they're actually set, where they have depth and where they have guys is tight end. They got three guys. Two of them can catch, and the third one is a great blocker, so they're kind of set there. But watch for Chris Herndon. If Darnold stays healthy and Herndon stays healthy, Jamison Crowder will probably lead the team in catches because he's the slot guy, and we're only going to throw it 4 yards at a time. But Herndon could lead the team in tight ends. He's going to be really good. On the other side of the ball, Avery Williamson took a pay cut this week just to keep his roster spot with the Jets because a fifth-round pick last year out of Minnesota named Blake Cashman is going to take his job. Greg Williams runs a 3-4. He likes two guys in the middle. And this Blake Cashman kid is surprisingly athletic. He was an above-average Big Ten linebacker. He wasn't a superstar. He was a fifth-round pick. He got injured in college. That's maybe why he dropped 1 or 2 rounds. People raving about him, but Blake Cashman may be the new big thumping middle linebacker for the Jets of the future.
That's interesting because, Williamson coming off an ACL tear, but prior to that, he was a really good player for the Jets. He's struggling with his comeback.
Yep, and one of the things is the reason why he took the pay cut and the Jets agreed to this is I don't think they wanted to cut him. The Jets aren't in a position where they should be getting rid of good players. We don't have that many linebackers. But I don't think they wanted to pay him the $6.5 they owed him to, play on third downs and not start. Funny thing about this, of course, is that we traded for C.J. Mosley last year. And you know where we've got some depth? Middle linebacker. So between the Bell
signed
Patrick Onwuasor, who's out for 6 weeks.
Onwuasor, thank you for the pronunciation. Onwuasor from the Ravens, right?
He's out for the next 6 weeks with a knee injury. So,
okay. I missed that.
So Blake Cashman's the guy. Obviously, Quinnen Williams, everyone knows about him. He might make the league this year, but who knows? But keep an eye out on this Cashman kid. He could be put it in terms people understand, he could be the new Sean Lee of the AFC East.
And how about, before we move on to the Giants, how about the Le'Veon Bell drama?
I
goodness.
I just can't. Between them getting into a social media spat.
Is there a chance he gets cut? No, right? Makes too much money.
It's too much money to cut him. Can we talk about what happened in the running backs room with the Jets real quick? So we've got Le'Veon Bell and head coach Adam Gase getting into a social media spat that forces Adam Gase to go to a press conference and says, we talked, it's okay. Meanwhile, 37-year-old Frank Gore is averaging 4.8 yards a carry in training camp, hasn't said a word, hasn't caused a problem, hasn't missed a practice. Last week, Joe Douglas traded a conditional 7th-round pick to the Miami Dolphins for a guy who averaged 1.8 yards per carry last season. Can you imagine giving up a draft asset? I don't care if it's a 7th-round pick or not for a guy who averaged 1.8 yards. The trade gets voided because he fails his physical. On the same day that the trade gets voided, LaMichael Pirine, our 4th-round pick and the new speed guy in our backfield, sprains his ankle. So it was a hell of a week for the Jets. As usual, we're doomed. I said 5-11 last week. I'm feeling 2-14, and Adam Gase is the first NFL head coach fired this season. There's my new prediction. That kind of week, boys.
Let me ask you this.
Goodness.
I know. I'm a little upset about this.
Shouldn't the Jets be in the Leonard Fournette game?
I thought the same thing. Why not? Take a chance.
Yeah.
Why not? They got too many cooks in that kitchen right now. Are they going to add Leonard Fournette and bad attitude?
The only two healthy running backs they have at this point are Bell and Gore.
So, that makes perfect sense. That was my immediate thought when he got cut in. He's not a bad player. Leonard Fournette can play. He kind of suffers from Leonard Williams syndrome. He just shouldn't have been picked that high. But he had over 1,600 yards last year. I think he had 45 catches. He can play. I think it was more of a discipline issue.
Well, when Tom Coughlin finds you $100,000 for sitting on the bench, your own team bench during an NFL game, I might have wanted that at Jacksonville too.
But that seems like, December in East Rutherford, 32 degrees outside. You go handing the ball to Leonard Fournette. Don't forget,
and
his rookie year. If not for a horrible call by the refs, Leonard Fournette takes the Jaguars to the Super Bowl.
That's true.
His rookie year. So
pair him up with Frank Gore for Thunder, and let Bell be the third guy. I don't care at this point. We got to rip everything down to the studs, keep Darnold, Herndon, two guys on defense, and rebuild this whole thing.
So that's the prediction for me. It's on tape. The Jets will sign Leonard Fournette this week.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm putting it on tape that the Jets, no matter where they're picking next year's draft, are taking Jamar Chase, even if it's 3 spots too high.
He's a volume guy, and there's not much opportunity for volume as the single guy in the Jets offense. They got Gore they got to feed. They got Bell they got to feed. They may sign him, but I don't think it's going to work out as rosy as you think.
I don't think they're going to feed Bell. Gase seems to me like I think Gase is going to freeze him out. Gase doesn't seem like let's work this out. I need you. You need me. He seems like
my way or the highway.
I'll show you who's got the power guy.
Right. Gase is mentioning that they want to use Le'Veon Bell possibly as a wide receiver, which makes sense considering the wide receiver depth issues that they have. But they're going to find ways to get him involved and just keep him out there somehow to keep him somewhat happy, I suppose. I don't know. Gase, as we mentioned last week, Gase works in mysterious ways.
Mysterious ways. All right, boys. Tell us about the Giants.
Yeah, Dan, why don't you go first? Let's go offense, and I'll do offense, and then we'll go defense. Dan, who's your first offensive giant to watch this year under the radar?
It was tough to look because I think as Giant fans, we're looking everywhere for some type of production. There's not really too many guys who are flying under the radar, but a guy I don't see mentioned a whole lot, talked about a whole lot, is Dion Lewis. Somewhat of a heralded free agent signing. I think he only signed a 1-year deal. Joe Judge, familiar with him from New England. I think that he's going to be an important piece, that he's going to be out there on a lot of snaps with Saquon Barkley. The key is Jason Garrett going to be multiple in their looks. Are they going to throw out of those types of formations? Are they going to run out of those formations? Are they going to use that to their advantage and not just try to play too smart, too cute, too tricky, not take advantage of what I think Dion Lewis can bring as a receiving back out of the backfield? A lot of play action. I see a lot of good wheel routes, swing passes to Dion Lewis. I think that's something to watch. I think he's an underrated player going under the radar. That's going to be a big deal this year for the Giants.
Man, I love that signing. I'm all in. I said it last week, New England South. I know it's never worked before with a Patriots assistant, but give me everybody who's played for the Patriots and Belichick. I'm willing to try it again. I love that signing. Great.
Didn't work with Shane either, but let's try it again.
I loved it. I love that. That was a great signing. We killed Gettleman, but good signing, Dave.
Let me ask you guys, though, on those plays that the ball's going to go to Dion Lewis, don't you want the ball going to Saquon Barkley?
No.
They're not duplicative
I want them
to you?
Save that mileage, save those snaps off of Saquon's legs, get him out on the field, use him more as a decoy. It'll open things up for him in the end. But I think he's not going to catch a whole ton of balls out of it, but I think it's useful to put the two of them on the field and give the ball to Lewis, keep some defenses honest, and like I said, open things up for Saquon maybe a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, Jack. But last year our backup running back was Wayne Gallman.
He's still going to be our backup running back.
Yeah, you might as well pull someone out of the stands to take the couple carries a game. So yeah, I'm not if he's on the field a lot, we got major problems. But you got to have backups in the NFL, and especially this year with COVID. You got to have depth everywhere you can, and it's a great depth signing. But no, I'm not expecting him to supplant Barkley in any way. But I do think Dan's onto something there. I do think we'll see a bunch of different formations with both of them on the field and maybe Barkley out wide.
The NFL these days is a game of mismatches, and I think he's a mismatch that you can take advantage of and give the defense their attention to Saquon and use him for a little sneaky play here and there. Again, not something that's going to be game-breaking, 10 plays a game, but a key piece. I think they can do something if they use them the right way, and that's the key.
Yeah. All right, so for mine, I'm going way under the radar. I mentioned last week the Giants have 3 wide receivers and really nobody else, and one of them this week, Golden Tate, pulled his hamstring, so he's going to be out for who knows how long. So really now we're down to 2 wide receivers. So my under the radar player to watch out for this year is a guy by the name of David Sills.
The quarterback.
So David Sills claimed
7th grade recruit.
Right.
7th grade recruit, committed to Lane Kiffin at USC, made huge news. I think he got an interview on Good Morning America out of it. Didn't exactly work out for either of them.
His father invented a school, right? So the kid could play in a private program at Delaware so they could travel the country.
Yes. So his name's not under the radar, but his play is. So it didn't work out for either. Kiffin got fired. He didn't end up going to USC. He ended up going to West Virginia. Wasn't able to win the quarterback job there, but playing on the scout team, he was mimicking a taller wide receiver on an upcoming opponent. Coaches noticed they had that he had some skills as a receiver, moved him there, and was a great college player. Had 33 touchdowns in his college career. Actually led all of college football in 2017 with 18 touchdown catches. Some reason didn't get drafted, though. He's a big guy, 6'3", 210. Doesn't have great speed. He's about a 4'6" guy. But the reviews out of camp are he is just catching everything, making plays left and right. And what I love the most is I saw a quote from Daniel Jones. Actually, let me give a shout-out to Danny Dimes, my real Giant.
Love that shirt.
Jones's quote this week is Sills is just a guy you can trust. So a quarterback wide receiver, I mean, there's no higher praise a quarterback can give a wide receiver than saying you can trust him. And Joe Judge has been raving about him. He had a quote where he said something along the lines of, the guy works so hard, not surprised at all. He's making all the plays he is in camp. So, just by virtue of injuries and lack of depth, I think David Sills is going to step up. I think he's going to end up being the Giants' 3rd wide receiver at the start of the season, because Tate will probably be out for some time. You know how hammies go. So that's my guy to watch. I think he could, catch 30 balls, maybe 40 if he has a really good year. And it's also important because he's 6'3", and we don't have any height at the wide receiver position. So if he can come in and make some plays, win some jump balls, maybe improve our red zone play, I think he's going to have a heck of a season and could help the Giants offense a lot.
Spent last year on the practice squad too, so he's not
unfamiliar. Signed with the Bills, got cut. Then he's been with us for a while, over a year now. But obviously a new regime. They seem to like him a lot.
Gotcha. Dan, whose jersey you rocking tonight for the audience?
2-6. It's classic. These beautiful throwbacks. Best thing the Giants have done in recent history is put on these throwbacks that should make them a regular part of the rotation. Yeah, what a beautiful, beautiful jersey.
I wish they'd switch back to the Giants helmet, just the script Giants.
Yeah, and go with those me both. And my old man, too. He hates that NY.
All right, Dan, let's flip sides. Let's go over defense. Who's your defensive guy to watch under the radar?
Boy, it sure is funny that you mentioned David Sills as your offensive guy to look for, because my defensive guy has actually spent most of camp, from what I understand, getting regularly roasted by David Sills. And that is number 34, Grant Haley. Now, this could be a pick of an underrated guy that could go horribly wrong, because with the signing of Logan Ryan, I think it may be likely that Grant Haley's days with the Giants are numbered, although I think at that point he'd probably be strong candidate for the practice squad. But he is an interior nickel type back, great tackler, has shown some deficiencies in coverage. Giants played a lot of zone in recent history. I think they'll be switching more to man coverage this year. I don't know if that necessarily helps Grant Haley, but he is a great tackler. So I think it will aid him if he's able to get on the field. His depth, his experience will be an aid to the Giants' depth. And I think a really big spot to look for him is special teams. Obviously, both of us being Penn State guys, Christian, we know the legend of Grant Haley as a special teams player, Joe Judge being a special teams guy. I hope that there's an opportunity for Grant Haley to play on all four, be a core special teamer, especially with the loss of Cody Core, the core special teamer. So hopefully he can get some snaps out there on specials, make a showing there. We know he can make a difference on specials. But that's my guy is Grant Haley. And it's not entirely because of my Penn State love, but it is probably a little bit to do with that.
Is one of Grant's coverage deficiencies the fact that he can't cover anyone? Does that go on the list of deficiencies there, or does he have other skills?
You may think so, but he is very intimidating looking at the line of scrimmage. So that's a big deal.
When your nickel guy in the slot has coverage deficiencies, that's a problem.
They're going to be switching from zone. I'm convinced they're going to be doing a lot of man coverage this year. I think that can make a difference for him. Also considering the fact that the only other depth at nickel that the Giants have is the rookie Holmes from UCLA. So I think he has value there. But he's somebody I'd like to see stay because of his experience and his likely contribution on special teams if given the opportunity.
You know who they're raving about in Washington football team's camp this year? Troy Apke apparently has become a favorite of Jack Del Rio. So another
just call us and we'll tell him there is not true.
Who runs a 4.9, right? Exactly.
He's one year classic camp standout. David Sills maybe another, but he's 1 year having a great camp. What happened?
Practice squad material.
I think Troy Quinn was the Redskins camp standout last year.
Troy Quinn, that's right.
90 passes. I'm not sure he caught 20.
No, I don't think he did.
But Dan, I love it. Thank you. We're going head to head on this one because my under the radar player, who I think is going to cause Grant Haley to get cut, as much as I hate to say that about our fellow Penn Stater, is Darnay Holmes, Giants' 4th round pick out of UCLA. This kid, another guy who's getting rave reviews out of camp, fell to the 4th round. His deficiency, fortunately, is not coverage. He's really outstanding coverage. He's got he's got quick feet, great short area quickness, okay speed, but he's a small guy. So he's got a small body. He's built, but his skills say he should play on the inside. Giants are trying to play him in the slot. His problem is he doesn't love to tackle, which isn't great for a slot cover guy.
That's a coverage deficiency, right? Is that going
player deficiency?
Doesn't like physical contact with
I think
it is a desirable trait in a nickel back.
I think it's more he doesn't love to come up and stuff the run, which you need. You can get away with that if you're Deion Sanders on the outside. You can't get away with that if you're a slot guy on the inside. But you know what? Out of deficiencies for defensive back, I'll take doesn't love to stuff the run over can't cover any day of the week. I think he's going to step in. I think along with Bradbury and Logan Ryan starting the outside, I think he's going to win the starting job as a slot cornerback. I pray Grant doesn't get cut, but it's not looking good for him right now. But he's one of those guys who just needs to find a way. Yeah, he made a ton of plays at Grant Haley, made a ton of plays at Penn State to win some big games. People said he had no chance of making the Giants. He's been around for a couple of years now. So I hope Grant does make that final cornerback spot. But we shall see where that goes. And Jack, as a big Notre Dame fan, you'll be happy to know I am predicting Julian Love will start at free safety for the New York Giants this year with Xavier McKinney breaking his foot.
Love him. He was the best defensive back we've had at Notre Dame since Shane Walton, probably back in 2001. He was Todd Light as a senior. But then they moved him. They moved him to safety. They drafted him. He was an outside guy in South Bend, and he did great. But I just don't think he was fast enough to play on the outside.
Yeah, he doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the speed to do.
But I'm happy to hear he's doing well. He's a guy that really helped us win a lot of games and then get crushed in the playoffs. So
good player.
That's what we do.
Well. A lot of guys helped Notre Dame get crushed in the playoffs.
I was gonna
just put that on Julian Love.
When was the last time Penn State won a national title? 86?
Yeah.
Irish are 88. So all right, we got you by 2 years right now.
All right, good for you.
Congratulations.
All right, that wraps up our football talk. Another great show, guys, but we would be remiss. We cannot go without giving a shout out and a rest in peace to the big man, John Thompson, passed away this week. One of the all-time great coaches, character, and people in college basketball. Jack is the elder statesman. Any thoughts on Big John?
Just what he means to this city and the African-American youth in the city of Washington, D.C.
All
People don't realize
country.
What a storied career he had. He chose Providence. He could have gone to a couple places and went to Providence. He was Bill Russell's backup with the Boston Celtics. People don't realize that.
He got a couple rings.
He did. He got a couple rings. Came back here and turned a little-known Catholic school named St. Anthony, not Jersey City St. Anthony, St. Anthony here. And one of those guys who went right from high school to Georgetown. When he got to Georgetown, they'd gone 3-23 the previous year. Obviously, they get Ewing in 81, and they go on from there. Multiple Final Fours. He's got a national title. Sent a bunch of guys to the pros. And, he is as responsible for the modern age of college basketball. In the Big East forums, that is really when college basketball, went to another stratosphere of the zeitgeist. And if I can – a little personal story. The University of Maryland, they went on probation in the late 80s after Len Bias's passing, God rest his soul, and the Bob Wade firing, and Walt Williams stuck around, and then Gary Williams came in. And our very first game off of probation, Christian and I, if you remember, we watched it together, Maryland and Georgetown at the Cap Center. And it was Joe Smith's first game. He had 26 points and 9 rebounds. And Dwayne Simpkins hit a layup at the buzzer to beat Georgetown 86-85. I don't know that I've enjoyed any single college basketball win more than in my entire life than I did that one. And I just remember how gracious John Thompson was afterwards, and I always remembered that. So sad to see him go. He's really left a legacy. It's an important family in college basketball. I really wish that Georgetown would kind of get back up to where it was under Ewing. And I still don't understand why Georgetown and Maryland can't play each other every year. That would be something that would really be great for this whole DMV area. But we're really going to miss John Thompson Jr. What a legend, and a Hall of Famer in everybody's book.
Great, man. And it's just, legend. Again, talking about the impact, I saw a great quote from Mike Tomlin, and you think about, focus on DC and basketball. And even a guy like Mike Tomlin said, he saw John Thompson coaching when he was a kid. And it kind of that's right when he realized, hey man, I can be, if he can do it, I can be a coach too. And that's actually what got him thinking he wanted to get in coaching after his playing days. So the impact of John Thompson just goes so far beyond basketball. And as you said, great man, we'll miss him. Dan, your thought?
Always remember that classic image of him with the towel over his shoulder, as much a part of him as anything else. Some of those great Georgetown teams that he had, and a coaching dynasty that he left with JT3 coming in behind him. Obviously not the same results, but he's a huge cultural icon and will sorely be missed. So rest in peace, Mr. Thompson.
All right, that's it for today's show. Thanks for watching our video. Give us a like, recommend it to your friends, and we'll be back soon with the next episode of East Coast Bias.
See ya.